Chocolates are cancelled in Japan. Of all the things to cancel, why chocolate? Well, it's not chocolates themselves that are problematic in Japan, it's more the context they're being given in. It all started back in February 2018 when Godiva, a Belgium-based chocolate company, ran a full-page ad in primetime newspaper Nihon Keizai Shimbun calling for Japanese people to stop buying chocolate. I know, a chocolate company ran a marketing campaign to make people buy less chocolate. But of course, there's a catch here. Godiva was campaigning to cancel a specific type of chocolate called Giri Choco, or obligation chocolates. And Godiva's campaign to stop it initiated quite a fierce debate amongst the Japanese public. To understand why this chocolate is getting cancelled, we need to cover two things. One, what even are obligation chocolates? And two, why do Japanese people celebrate Valentine's Day with their boss? Giri Choco, or obligation chocolates, are a special type of chocolate that's given out on Valentine's Day in Japan by women to male bosses, co-workers, and acquaintances. Giri chocolates are meant to be a token of appreciation in a professional context, and a way to acknowledge the assistance received by co-workers or bosses throughout the year. Showing appreciation through chocolate is great, but when only women are expected to do it, it starts to feel a bit one-sided. And let's not forget, you're giving this not just on any day, but Valentine's Day. As you can see, Valentine's in Japan works a bit differently. To unpack this difference and understand why Giri Choco is a thing, we first have to cover some history behind Valentine's Day in Japan. You see, Valentine's was first introduced to Japan in 1936 by a chocolate company called Morozov. Morozov mainly targeted foreigners and tried to use Valentine's as a way to incentivize sales. Their campaign didn't do well though, and subsequent attempts to reintroduce Valentine's Day to Japan around the 1950s also didn't perform well. It wasn't until the 1970s when confectioners strategically positioned Valentine's Day as a day for Japanese women to express their feelings to men by giving gifts like chocolate that led to the mainstream adoption of Valentine's Day in society. Just like that, the expectation for women to give chocolate on Valentine's Day took hold. Confectioners introduced not only the idea of romantic gifts, but also gifts given out of obligation, which are our Giri chocolates. What started as a marketing campaign quickly became a social obligation. And this consumerist practice was able to seamlessly blend in with Japanese society because of this cultural concept, Giri. Giri, as defined in Rita and others' work, acts as an ethical force that requires people to, even when their natural tendency might be to behave otherwise, participate in socially required reciprocal activities. Coming back to Valentine's, you might not want to give your coworkers chocolate, but if it was expected of you, then you had to, especially since this was a gift of appreciation, to thank male coworkers and bosses for their help throughout the year. You don't want to seem ungrateful, do you? The positioning of Valentine's as a day for only women to give gifts was also quite a novel approach, because traditionally, gift giving in Japan was a very male-dominated act. Women exchanged gifts with in-laws and family, but it was men that gave gifts to other men in political settings, which women were not allowed to be a part of. The introduction of Giri Choco then, a gift meant for male bosses and co-workers, gave Japanese women an opportunity to exercise this power in giving gifts to deepen their various relationships, which was not readily observed at that time. In this way, some scholars portray Giri Choco as a symbol of empowerment for women, but at the same time, the word giri, or obligation, kind of implies otherwise and hints at some of the problematic issues behind this practice. For starters, an obligatory gift sounds quite paradoxical. Yes, Japanese women are able to use gifts as a way to further their relationships with male colleagues and bosses, but it's also expected of them to do so in order to maintain them. Giri may not be the most straightforward societal norm, but it is fundamental to how relationships are formed and sustained in Japanese society. And to truly understand its long-standing significance, we need to go back in time. The concept of giri has existed since ancient Japan, with early instances of it being documented during the Yayoi period, where farmers would collaborate and help one another plan and harvest crops. Farmers that received more help were eager to then repay the favor, forming the essential reciprocity behind giri. During the Muromachi period, giri was encompassed through the act of gift-giving, which lives on through the existence of Giri Choco and many other practices. It wasn't until the feudal era, though, that the idea of giri really cemented itself as a core cultural norm in Japan, and that's thanks to the samurais, who pushed values like obligation, reciprocity, and loyalty. Giri to samurai was putting your life on the line to repay the favor the king had showed you. and a failure to reciprocate and show up would break trust and lead to a loss of respect. This interpretation of kiri as loyalty and honor became more refined during the Edo period. As it came to represent civic responsibility, kiri became a rule that enforced reciprocation amongst one another to maintain social relationships. And if I may, I think we should enforce another rule to maintain good relationships. And that is, if you're putting on perfume or cologne, do not spray it so much on yourself, Susan, that I choke on your scent in the work elevator. And because we're all about reciprocity and obligation today, Susan, I'll let you in on a better way to do things. If you want to smell good and find the best fragrance for you without breaking the bank, you need to check out Scentbird. Scentbird is a fragrance subscription service carrying over 700 fragrances. I chose 4 fragrances, and I mentioned this before, but I'm still obsessed with the smell of osmanthus. It reminds me of when I traveled to China, and if you're a fan of sandalwood and cedar, don't do what I did and dangerously hover around the Lalabo's fragrance selection. Try this scent instead. Scentbird offers such a wide range of fragrances, including popular brands like Prada and Versace, as well as all sorts of niche labels for you to explore, so you're sure to find the right one for you. One other thing I really like about receiving different rotations of scents is that I actually get to try the fragrances for myself. Yes, I'm the idiot that blind bought fragrances when I was just starting out. I would commit to whole bottles of a scent, dropping hundreds of dollars for something I had never even smelt because other people online liked it. And when I finally did receive the scent and smelt it for myself, I did not like it. That was a very painful and expensive lesson. Don't do what I did. Instead, smell every scent for yourself. Really explore what's out there. And Scentbird is a great way to do that at a very affordable price point. So scan the QR code here or use my code AINI55 to get 55% off your first month at Scentbird, which means you can get your first fragrance for just $8 and the next month will be only $16.95. Thank you Scentbird for sponsoring this video. Kiri forms an essential part of Japanese society and interpersonal relationships, and now that we've traced its roots and understood its significance, we can better examine the practice of gifting Giri Choco and why it's getting cancelled. Giri Choco is not as prevalent now, but it was a big deal 30 years ago, and it's worth taking a look at that as we work our way to the present. In a 1991 survey conducted by Morozov, 84% of women gave out chocolate on Valentine's Day to male co-workers and bosses, compared to the 28% of women who gave chocolate on the day to their lover. I'm not sure whether every respondent in that survey was in a relationship, otherwise the comparison between gifting chocolates to lovers and co-workers would be quite skewed, but either way, if we just focus on the Giri Choco stat, 84% of women giving chocolate to male co-workers or bosses is a lot. And the dominance of this practice attracted a fair share of criticism. Many remarked that Valentine's Day in Japan was not romantic at all. Instead, the day's arrival was a chore for many women. It was stressful because they had to figure out who to give chocolates to. If you missed someone who expected a Giri Choco, then that could offend or upset them. Gifting Giri Chocos was also an expensive activity. Giri Chocos individually are meant to be more affordable, but it adds up when you're buying 10 of them. And to be safe, you'd always rather overgive to preserve relationships than undergive and ruin one. So in many ways for women, gifting Giri Choco felt like a burden. But before we slam this practice, I do want to show you a different perspective, which highlights how Giri Chocos can be a very effective way at conveying gratitude and thanks, as it's originally intended. A woman in her mid-30s says this: "Hiraoka, my boss, is the most kind. His manners are gentle and he always remembers you and helps me during the year. Every time he goes on a trip, he returns with an omiyage gift and offers it to the office. I will give him a Giri chocolate. It is a good occasion to thank him." In this instance, Giri Choco is an effective way to show thanks on the day to someone who's taken care of you. So it would appear that Giri Choco, when it's given with the intention of genuinely thanking someone and reciprocating their goodwill, is a joy to give. But when it feels like it's an obligatory ritual feeling unnecessary consumerism and comes with consequences if you don't participate in it, then Giri Choco is not a fun gifting practice. It's simply a burden. Or I guess we could say this is the difference between getting to give chocolate and having to give chocolate. But like it or hate it, this practice and the expectation of Giri Choco was set. And the biggest winner here were the confectionists. In 1996, estimated chocolate sales in Japan were 49.6 billion yen. Chocolate sales on Valentine's accounted for up to 70% of chocolate stores' annual sales in Japan. The expectation to gift Giri Choco was so pervasive that it was observed to boost stocks of chocolate stores back then. But as the years went on, Japanese society saw a shift in cultural attitudes and gender norms. Women received less pressure to conform and were also more willing to challenge traditional gendered practices, such as gifting Giri Choco. In addition, other factors like rising costs, shifting priorities of treating family, friends, and oneself instead meant there was growing dissent among women with the practice of giving Giri Choco. And that's the AngloCaesar aimed for with their bold ad campaign in 2018 to put a stop to Giri Chocos. This was a groundbreaking move at the time, as it directly challenged the deeply ingrained cultural norm of Giri. The ad states, Valentine's Day is supposed to be a day when you confess your true feelings. It's not a day when you're supposed to go out of your way to keep good relations at work. Godiva's proposed solution to end the practice of Giri Chocos was to call upon Japan's business executives to enforce a ban. For individual women, choosing not to participate in this tradition could result in unfavorable workplace consequences. However, if company leaders set the expectation that Giri Choco is unnecessary, women would genuinely be able to opt out without fear of repercussions. It's also worth pointing out here that this act by Godiva to ban chocolates as a chocolate company isn't as self-sacrificing as it may seem, because there are actually multiple types of chocolates that are gifted on Valentine's Day, with traditionally the two biggest types being Giri Choco, that we are very familiar with by now, and Honto Choco, or true love chocolate, the chocolate you give to someone you actually romantically like. Some easy ways to tell the difference between the two is through how expensive the chocolate is, how fancy it is, and the brand of chocolate. And guess what? Godiva is not a Giri Choco brand, which is why this is such a brilliant move. They're raising awareness on the issue, addressing actual frustrations by women that aren't able to really be expressed, and they're not losing any money from doing this. Many women who felt trapped by this tradition greatly appreciated this sentiment, like Tomoko Ishii, a female professional who explains, "It gets expensive to buy chocolates for co-workers, and you always have to worry about mixed signals. You have to think about how much to spend. They can't be too cheap either, or that could be insulting." She says if her boss orders people not to give Giri Choco, that would relieve her of the yearly burden. Regarding this campaign, Godiva Japan's president says, "We'd like to see people enjoy Valentine's Day, not as something done out of a sense of obligation or custom or ritual, but as a day when people can freely express their feelings and love." You have to respect this move regardless of motive. Godiva is addressing valid concerns and may have accidentally taken out half the competitors in the chocolate industry with it. Godiva's ad was already shaking things up, then COVID happened and dealt the final blow. People weren't in the office anymore, so forget about not seeing your co-workers. People didn't even know who their co-workers were. Even though we're past this phase now, with most of us going back into the office, the practice of gifting Giri Choco never really recovered. In 2023, a survey showed 5% of respondents planning to gift Giri Choco, as opposed to 14% in the year pre-COVID. As gifting Giri Choco declines, other forms of chocolate gifting on Valentine's Day have risen, such as tomo choco, chocolate for friends, kazoku choco, chocolate for family, and jibun choco, chocolate for yourself. We can clearly see the shift in attitude in this interview played on Japanese TV.
自分が一番大事やもんな。頑張ってるからご褒美みたいな。仕事で疲れて帰ってきて自分も疲れみたいな感じで一日一個ずつ食べたいな。
Valentine's gift giving in Japan is becoming less about obligation and more about personal connection. Decades ago, women gifting chocolate to men in the workplace could be interpreted as a form of empowerment. Now, empowerment is breaking free from that expectation and treating oneself instead to an indulgent, fancy chocolate bar. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and now you're obligated to subscribe. To reciprocate, I'll keep making thoughtful cultural commentary videos on East Asia just like this one. Thank you as well to my wonderful patrons for their support, and don't forget to go check out Scentbird for 55% off your first order by using my code AINI55. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!